The bullet grazed Olivia Kane's cheek as she dove behind the overturned supply wagon, and in that split second, she realized that her father's business partners had never intended to let her leave St. Louis, Missouri alive. Blood trickled warm down her face, mixing with the dust that coated everything in this godforsaken August heat of 1873, and she pressed her palm against the shallow wound, while her other hand fumbled for the small derringer hidden in the folds of her traveling dress. Her father had been dead only 3 weeks, murdered, they said, by bandits on the trail, but Olivia knew better now. She had discovered the ledgers, seen the discrepancies, understood that Marcus Finch and his associates had been stealing from the Kane Trading Company for years, and her father had finally figured it out. "Come out, Miss Kane," Finch called from somewhere beyond the wagon. "We can discuss this like civilized people." Civilized people did not ambush a woman on the outskirts of town just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Civilized people did not embezzle thousands of dollars and then commit murder to cover their crimes. Olivia's fingers closed around the derringer's handle, and she carefully checked that both barrels were loaded. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 15, insisting that a woman in the Western Territories needed to know how to defend herself, even if St. Louis was becoming more refined with each passing year. She had 22 years behind her, a head full of her mother's red gold hair, and apparently more courage than sense, because instead of crying or begging for her life, she felt a cold fury settling into her bones. "I have copies of the ledgers," she shouted back, buying time while she scanned her surroundings. "If anything happens to me, they go straight to the marshal." Finch laughed, and the sound made her skin crawl. "No, you do not. We searched your house, your father's office, even that ridiculous hat shop you like to visit. You have nothing." He was right about that. She had hidden the original ledgers, but had not yet made copies, a mistake that might cost her everything. The wagon provided cover from the front, but if Finch and his men circled around, she would be exposed. The landscape here at the edge of town offered little shelter, just scrub grass and scattered rocks, with the Mississippi River glinting in the distance. Behind her, perhaps 200 yards away, stood a cluster of buildings marking the boundary of the civilized world she had known all her life. Another shot rang out, splintering the wood near her head, and Olivia made her decision. She could not stay here and wait to be murdered. Gathering her skirts with one hand, derringer clutched in the other, she ran. The first few yards were the worst, completely exposed, as she sprinted away from the wagon toward a shallow gully she had spotted. Bullets kicked up dirt at her heels, and her lungs burned as she pushed herself harder than she had ever run before. She was almost to the gully when a horse thundered past her, and she stumbled, certain this was the end. But the rider was not one of Finch's men. He wore dusty trail clothes and a worn hat pulled low, and as he wheeled his mount between her and her pursuers, she heard the distinctive crack of a rifle. "Get down!" he shouted, and Olivia threw herself into the gully, skinning her palms on the rocky ground. More gunfire erupted, a chaotic exchange that seemed to last forever, but probably only consumed a minute or two. Olivia pressed herself flat against the earth, breathing hard, tasting dust and blood and fear. Then sudden silence fell, broken only by the sound of a horse approaching. "You hit?" The voice was deep and measured, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or perhaps Oklahoma Territory. Olivia lifted her head cautiously. The rider had dismounted and was walking toward her, rifle held loosely in one hand. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to violence, but his face, when he crouched beside her, showed only concern. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with sun-weathered skin, dark hair that needed cutting, and eyes the color of summer sky. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous look that probably served him well in his line of work. "Just my face," she managed, touching her cheek again. "Thank you. I thought I was dead." "Name is Colt Brennan," he said, offering his hand to help her up. "I have been tracking those men for 3 days. They robbed a payroll shipment outside of Jefferson City last month. Did not realize they had branched out into murdering young women." Olivia accepted his hand and stood, grateful when he steadied her, as the world tilted briefly. Up close, she could see the trail dust coating his clothes, the weariness in his eyes, the way his hand never strayed far from the revolver at his hip. Olivia Kane. My father owned the Kane Trading Company. They killed him, and now they want to kill me because I found proof of what they had been doing. Colt's expression hardened. Marcus Finch? You know him? Know of him. He has his fingers in a lot of pies, most of them rotten. Where are these ledgers? Hidden. But he was right, I do not have copies. If he finds them before I can get them to the authorities. She broke off, looking past him toward the wagon. Two bodies lay sprawled in the dust, and she recognized them as men who had worked for her father, men she had trusted. Are they dead? One is. The other will live long enough to stand trial if we get him to the marshal. Colt studied her face, his gaze lingering on the wound. That needs cleaning, and we need to move. Finch is not stupid. He will have more men, and they will come looking. The practicality in his tone steadied her. Olivia had spent her whole life in St. Louis, daughter of a successful businessman, educated in a proper finishing school, trained to run a household and make pleasant conversation at dinner parties. Nothing had prepared her for this, and yet she found herself thinking clearly, despite the fear still humming through her veins. The ledgers are in my father's warehouse, hidden inside a false bottom in his desk. I was going to retrieve them tomorrow when I would have an excuse to be there. We get them tonight, Colt said. No more waiting. They will be watching the warehouse. Probably. He walked back to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding that looked as trail-worn as its rider, and retrieved a canteen. When he returned, he dampened a cloth and gently cleaned the blood from her face. His touch was surprisingly careful for a man with such calloused hands. This will scar, but not badly. You were lucky. Olivia met his eyes and saw something there that made her breath catch. A recognition, perhaps, or simply an acknowledgement that they were now bound together by circumstance and danger. You keep saying we. Why are you helping me? Because those men are criminals, and I am a bounty hunter with legal authority to bring them in. Because your father was apparently murdered, and that deserves justice. He paused, still holding the cloth against her cheek. And because I have 3 sisters back home, and I would want someone to help them if they were in your situation. It was not the answer she expected, and it loosened something tight in her chest. Where is home? Austin, Texas, or it was before the war. Been moving around since then, taking work where I can find it. He stepped back, tucking the cloth away. Can you ride? Yes. She had learned as a girl, though her mother had disapproved, thinking it unladylike. Good. We need to get you somewhere safe while I scout the warehouse. He glanced toward town, calculation in his eyes. Is there anyone you trust completely? Someone Finch would not think to watch? Olivia considered. Most of her father's friends were business associates who might already be compromised. Her female friends were lovely but not equipped to handle a situation like this. Then she thought of someone who might help. Sarah Mitchell. She runs a boarding house on 3rd Street. She was my mother's closest friend before Mother died. She is tough as nails and does not scare easily. Can you find your way there without being seen? Through the back streets, yes? Colt whistled, and his horse came immediately. He swung into the saddle with fluid grace and extended his hand down to her. Come on, then. We are losing light, and I want those ledgers in hand before midnight. Olivia hesitated only a moment before taking his hand and letting him pull her up behind him. She had never ridden astride, always side saddle as was proper, and certainly never with her arms wrapped around a strange man's waist. But propriety seemed a foolish concern when people were trying to kill her, so she held on tight as Colt urged the horse into a steady lope. They skirted the edge of town, staying away from the main roads where they might be spotted. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the evening air was marginally cooler than the furnace blast of afternoon. Olivia could feel the solid warmth of Colt's back against her chest, the way he moved with the horse as if they were one creature. She had met plenty of men in her social circle, bankers and merchants and lawyers, all carefully polite and boring as dust. Colt Brennan was something entirely different, and she was surprised to find that she felt safer with this stranger than she had felt in weeks. There, she said, pointing toward a large house set back from the street. That is Sarah's place. Colt guided the horse into the alley behind the boarding house and dismounted, then helped Olivia down. Her legs wobbled slightly after the ride, but she steadied herself against his arm. I am going in the back, she said. Less chance of being seen. I will wait here until you signal that everything is clear. She nodded and made her way to the back door, knocking in the pattern she and Sarah had used as a game when Olivia was younger. 3 quick raps followed by 2 slow ones. After a long moment, the door cracked open, and Sarah's weathered face peered out. Olivia! Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the torn dress, the dried blood, the wild look that Olivia was sure she must have. Good Lord, child, what happened? I need help. Can I come in? Sarah pulled the door wide immediately, and Olivia gestured toward the alley where Colt waited. He emerged from the shadows leading his horse, and Sarah's expression shifted from shock to something harder and more appraising as she took in the armed man. It is all right, Olivia said quickly. He saved my life. Marcus Finch tried to have me killed. That was apparently all Sarah needed to hear. She ushered them both inside, into a kitchen that smelled of bread and coffee, and closed the door firmly. I heard about your father. I am so sorry, honey. I wanted to come see you, but I have been laid up with my back. Finch killed him, Olivia said, and saying it aloud made it real in a way it had not been before. He and his associates have been stealing from the company. Father must have found out. They made it look like bandits, but it was murder. Sarah's mouth pressed into a thin line. That son of a bitch. Pardon my language. What do you need? While Olivia explained about the ledgers and the plan to retrieve them, Sarah set about cleaning her wound properly and finding her a fresh dress. The boarding house was quiet, most of the residents either out for the evening or already retired to their rooms. Colt stood near the window, watching the street, saying little but missing nothing. You cannot go to the warehouse, Sarah said firmly, once she understood the situation. If they are watching it, they will shoot you on sight. I can get in without being seen, Colt said, but I need to know the layout. Olivia described her father's office, the location of the desk, how to access the hidden compartment. The building has windows on the 2nd floor that are usually left unlatched because the heat gets trapped up there. If you can climb up, you can get in that way. I will go with you, Olivia added. Both Colt and Sarah started to protest, but Olivia cut them off. I know that office better than anyone. I know which floorboards creak, where the shadows are deepest, exactly how the mechanism on that hidden compartment works. You will be faster and quieter with me there. Colt studied her for a long moment, and Olivia lifted her chin, refusing to back down. Finally, he nodded. Change into something dark and tie your hair back. That red gold stands out like a beacon. An hour later, dressed in a borrowed dark skirt and shirtwaist, her hair braided and pinned tightly, Olivia moved through the darkened streets beside Colt. They kept to the shadows, avoiding the pools of light cast by street lamps and the laughter spilling from saloons. The warehouse district was quieter, most businesses closed for the night, but Colt insisted they approach cautiously. He was right to be careful. As they crept closer to the Kane Trading Company building, Olivia spotted 2 men lounging near the front entrance, trying to look casual, but clearly standing watch. Colt pulled her back into the darkness of an alley across the street. There will be more inside, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. We go around back, up the fire ladder to that window you mentioned. Fast and quiet. If anything goes wrong, you run. Do you understand? What about you? I can take care of myself. Promise me you will run if I tell you to. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. They circled the block, coming at the warehouse from the rear. The iron ladder attached to the back wall looked stable enough, though it had seen better days. Colt went first, climbing silently, and Olivia followed, grateful for the physical training her father had insisted on. He had always said a woman should be strong, should be capable, and she sent up a silent thank you to his memory as she pulled herself up, rung by rung. The window was indeed unlatched. Colt eased it open and slipped inside, then reached back to help Olivia through. They found themselves in a storage room filled with crates and barrels, the air thick with the smell of tobacco and spices. Olivia oriented herself quickly, pointing toward the stairs that led down to the main floor where her father's office was located. They descended slowly, testing each step before putting their full weight on it. Olivia's heart hammered so loudly she was certain it would give them away, but they reached the bottom without incident. Her father's office door stood closed, and through the frosted glass panel she could see lamplight flickering. Someone was inside. Colt pressed a finger to his lips and drew his revolver. They moved to flank the door, and Olivia reached for the handle. It turned easily, unlocked, and she pushed it open. Marcus Finch sat behind her father's desk, papers spread before him, a satisfied smile on his face that died when he saw them. His hand moved toward a drawer, but Colt was faster. "Do not," Colt said quietly, the revolver aimed steady at Finch's chest. "Hands on the desk where I can see them." Finch complied, but his eyes were calculating. "Mr. Brennan, is it? I heard you were in the area. This is not your concern. This is a private business matter. Murder is everyone's concern. So is robbery." Colt moved further into the room, keeping the gun trained on Finch. "Miss Kane, get the ledgers." Olivia hurried to the desk, and Finch watched her with an expression that made her skin crawl. "You stupid girl, you think those ledgers will make any difference? I have friends, powerful friends. The marshal is in my pocket, the judge too. Nothing will happen to me." "Maybe in St. Louis," Colt said. "But federal marshals take a dim view of payroll robbery, and I am betting once we start digging, we will find you have been stealing from more than just the Kane Trading Company." Olivia's fingers found the hidden latch on the desk, and the false bottom sprang open. The ledgers were there, 3 of them, bound in leather and filled with her father's neat handwriting. She pulled them out, clutching them to her chest. That was when the office door burst open and 2 more men rushed in, guns drawn. Everything happened too fast. Colt spun, firing, and one of the men went down. The other got a shot off that shattered the lamp on the desk, plunging the room into darkness broken only by muzzle flashes. Olivia dove behind a filing cabinet, the ledgers still pressed against her. She heard Finch shouting, "More gunfire!" the sound of breaking glass. Then Colt was beside her, grabbing her arm. "Now! We go now!" They ran for the back of the building, not bothering with stealth anymore. Behind them, she heard Finch screaming orders, heard booted feet thundering in pursuit. Colt kicked open a door that led to the loading dock, and they emerged into the night air. His horse was not here, left blocks away for safety, which meant they were on foot with armed men closing in. "This way," Olivia gasped, pulling him toward a narrow gap between buildings. She had played in these streets as a child, knew every alley and shortcut. They plunged into the darkness, running hard, and emerged onto a side street that led toward the river. The Mississippi stretched wide and black before them, dotted with the lights of boats and barges. The waterfront at night was a rough place, full of sailors and dock workers and people who minded their own business, which made it perfect for disappearing. Olivia led Colt down to the docks, past warehouses and chandleries, until they reached a section where smaller boats were tied up. "Do you know how to handle a boat?" she asked, breathing hard. "Well enough. Then we take one of these and cross the river. They will not think to look for us on the Illinois side tonight." It was theft, but Olivia was beyond caring about such niceties. They chose a small rowboat that looked seaworthy, and Colt untied it while Olivia climbed in, still clutching the ledgers. He pushed off and jumped in after her, taking up the oars and pulling hard toward the far shore. Behind them, shouts echoed across the water and a shot fired, but they were already too far out, swallowed by the darkness and the mist rising off the river. Olivia sagged against the side of the boat, exhausted and terrified and exhilarated all at once. They had done it. They had the ledgers. They were alive. Colt rowed with steady, powerful strokes, and Olivia watched his face in the faint starlight. He had risked his life for her, for justice, for reasons she still did not fully understand. When they reached the Illinois shore, he pulled the boat up onto a muddy bank and helped her out. "There is a town about 5 miles north," he said. "We can reach it by morning, find somewhere to hole up, and figure out our next move. We cannot go back to St. Louis. Not yet. First, we need to get these ledgers to someone who is not in Finch's pocket. Federal marshal in Springfield, maybe, or St. Joseph." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You did well back there. Kept your head. A lot of people would have panicked. I was terrified. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what needs doing despite the fear." They walked through the night, following a road that paralleled the river. Olivia had never been so tired, never been so aware of every ache and pain in her body, but she kept putting one foot in front of the other because Colt was beside her and they had to keep moving. He talked to her as they walked, asking about her life, telling her stories about his sisters, about tracking outlaws through Oklahoma territory, about a cattle drive he had worked one summer when he was 16. His voice became a lifeline, keeping her grounded and focused. She learned that he was 27, that he had fought in the war for the Confederacy, though he had not believed in the cause, that he had been trying to earn enough money to buy land and settle down somewhere quiet. She told him about her mother dying when she was 12, about learning the trading business from her father, about her dreams of expanding the company to include stores throughout Missouri. By the time the sky began to lighten in the east, they had reached a small settlement that consisted of little more than a general store, a blacksmith, and a few houses. Colt used some of his saved money to arrange for them to rest in a room above the store, and Olivia collapsed onto a narrow bed, asleep almost before her head hit the pillow. She woke to afternoon sunlight slanting through a grimy window and the smell of coffee. Colt sat at a small table, cleaning his guns with the methodical care of someone who knew his life might depend on them. When he noticed she was awake, he poured her a cup of coffee from a battered pot. "Feeling better?" "Sore, but yes." She accepted the coffee gratefully, letting the bitter heat wake her fully. "What do we do now?" "I have been thinking about that. Springfield is our best bet for finding an honest marshal. That is about 100 miles southwest. We can take a stage part of the way, but we will need to be careful. Finch has money and reach. He will be looking for us. Yes, which is why we need to move fast and stay unpredictable." Colt reassembled his revolver with practiced efficiency. "I sent a telegram this morning to a friend in Jefferson City, someone I trust, told him what we found, asked him to start making inquiries about Finch's connections, but we still need to get those ledgers into official hands." Olivia set down her coffee and opened one of the ledgers, studying her father's careful notations. The amounts that had been stolen were staggering, tens of thousands of dollars over a period of several years. Father must have been so angry when he figured it out. He hated dishonesty more than anything. "He raised a brave daughter. He would be proud of you." The simple words hit harder than elaborate praise would have. Olivia blinked back sudden tears and focused on the ledger. "There are names here I do not recognize. People Finch was paying off, I think." Colt moved to look over her shoulder, and she was acutely aware of his closeness, the warmth radiating from him, the scent of leather and gunpowder, and something uniquely him. "That looks like the deputy marshal's name, and there, that is a judge. You were right to run. If you had gone to the local law, you would be dead now." They spent the afternoon studying the ledgers, making notes, preparing a case that could not be ignored. As they worked, Olivia found herself stealing glances at Colt, noticing the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the rare smile that softened his hard face when he found a particularly damning piece of evidence. He was unlike anyone she had ever known, a man who lived by his own code in a violent world, and she was beginning to realize that her feelings toward him were far more complicated than simple gratitude. That evening, they purchased supplies and borrowed horses from a farmer who was willing to look the other way for the right price. They rode west as the sun set, putting more distance between themselves and St. Louis. The Missouri countryside rolled past, fields of corn and wheat, scattered farmhouses, patches of forest. They camped that night under the stars, and Colt showed her how to build a fire that produced minimal smoke. "You are very good at this," Olivia said, watching him work. "Living rough, I mean." "Had plenty of practice. After the war, I did not want to go back to farming. Seemed too quiet, too ordinary after everything we had seen. So I started taking bounty work, tracking down deserters and thieves. Found I had a knack for it. Do you ever get lonely?" He looked at her across the fire, and the flames cast shadows that made his face hard to read. "Sometimes, but loneliness is safer than caring too much. People I cared about had a habit of dying. The war? And other things. My older brother was killed at Shiloh. Best friend shot in the back by someone he thought was loyal. After a while, you learn to keep your distance." Olivia understood that impulse, the desire to protect yourself from more loss. But she also thought it sounded like a sad way to live. Your sisters, you care about them. That is different. They are blood. I think you care about more than you let on," she said softly. "You did not have to help me. You could have just gone after Finch and his men for the bounty and left me to fend for myself. But you did not." Colt poked at the fire with a stick, not meeting her eyes. "Could not leave you to get killed. Would not have been right. Thank you for everything." He finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her heart skip. "You are easy to help, Olivia Kane. Easier than you should be." They fell silent after that, but it was a comfortable silence full of awareness and possibility. Olivia lay down on her bedroll and watched the stars wheel overhead, listening to the night sounds and the steady rhythm of Colt's breathing. She had never felt more alive than she did right now, running for her life with a bounty hunter who might be the most decent man she had ever met. They reached Springfield 4 days later, dusty and tired but unharmed. Colt took them straight to the federal marshal's office, a sturdy brick building in the center of town. The marshal himself was a grizzled man in his 50s, with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened to their story, examined the ledgers, and asked pointed questions that demonstrated he was nobody's fool. "This is serious business," Marshal Hendricks said when they finished. "These names you have here, if this is accurate, it goes higher than I would have guessed. I am going to need to send telegrams, coordinate with marshals in other jurisdictions. Mr. Brennan, you have done good work here." "It was Miss Kane who had the courage to run instead of letting them silence her," Colt said. Hendricks studied Olivia with new respect. "Most people would have folded. You have steel in your spine, young lady. Your father would be proud." He stood, gathering the ledgers. "I am placing both of you in protective custody until we can round up Finch and his associates. There are rooms above the jail that are secure. Not fancy, but safe." The rooms were indeed Spartan, just a bed and a washstand, and a small window with bars. But after days on the trail, Olivia did not care. She washed the dust off as best she could and changed into a dress that Marshal Hendricks's wife had kindly provided. When she emerged, she found Colt standing in the hallway, also cleaned up, his dark hair still damp. "You look different without the trail grime," she said, smiling. "So do you, like a proper lady again." "I am not sure I want to be a proper lady anymore. Proper ladies do not steal boats or break into warehouses." Colt's mouth quirked in something that was almost a smile. "No, they do not. But proper or not, you are impressive." They ate dinner in a small restaurant near the marshal's office. accompanied by a deputy who kept watch from a nearby table. The food was simple but good, and Olivia realized she was ravenous. As they ate, Colt told her more about Texas, about the ranch his family had owned before the war, about his sisters who were now married to men he approved of, more or less. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked. "Sometimes. But there is nothing there for me now. The ranch was sold to pay debts. My sisters have their own lives. I am just a man with a horse and a gun going where the work takes me. That sounds lonely. It is what I know." Olivia set down her fork, studying him. "What if you knew something different?" His eyes met hers, and the air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. "What are you asking, Olivia?" "I am asking if you ever think about settling down, having a home, building something instead of just chasing outlaws." "I think about it, but a man like me, I do not have much to offer. No land, no real prospects, just some money saved and skills that are not much use in peacetime. I think you are underestimating yourself." Before he could respond, the deputy approached their table. "Marshall wants to see you both. He has news." They followed him back to the office where Hendricks stood studying a telegram. His expression was grim. "Finch ran. Got word somehow that you made it here with the Ledgers. He is heading west, probably planning to disappear into the territories." "What about the others?" Colt asked. "We arrested 2 of them. The rest scattered. But Finch is the linchpin. If he gets away, he takes all his connections and knowledge with him." Hendricks looked at Colt. "I need someone to track him. Someone good. I can deputize you, make it official." "Where was he last seen?" "Bought a horse in Herman, heading toward Jefferson City. After that, my guess is he will aim for Kansas, maybe Colorado." Colt did not hesitate. "I will bring him back." "Wait," Olivia said. "If Finch is running, then I am safe here. The threat is over." "For now," Hendricks agreed. "But it would be better to have him in custody. No chance of him rebuilding his operation or coming after you later." Olivia turned to Colt, fear tight in her chest. "This is dangerous. Finch will not go quietly. It is what I do." His voice was gentle but firm. "You will be safe here. Hendricks will make sure of that. And when I come back, we can talk about what comes next." "What if you do not come back?" He stepped closer, and for a moment she thought he might touch her, but he kept his hands at his sides. "I will come back. I promise you that." She wanted to argue, to insist that he stay, but she could see the determination in his face. This was who he was, a man who finished what he started, who brought justice to those who thought they were above the law. So instead she nodded. "Be careful. Please. Always am." He left before dawn the next morning, and the days that followed were the longest of Olivia's life. Marshall Hendricks was kind, his wife even kinder, bringing Olivia books and keeping her company. But Olivia could not stop thinking about Colt riding into danger, could not stop worrying that she would never see him again. She had known him less than 2 weeks, but he had become essential to her in a way she did not fully understand. He had seen her at her worst, frightened and desperate and covered in blood, and he had not underestimated her. He had trusted her courage, relied on her knowledge, treated her as a partner rather than a delicate flower to be protected. And somewhere in the chaos of running for their lives, she had fallen in love with him. The realization came quietly one evening as she sat in her room watching the sunset. She loved Colt Brennan, loved his quiet strength and his dry humor, and the way he tried to pretend he did not care while caring desperately. She loved that he had risked everything to help her, that he had made her feel brave and capable and alive. And she had no idea if he felt the same way. 2 weeks after he left, a telegram arrived. Hendricks showed it to her with a satisfied expression. "Got him, bringing him back. 2 days out. Colt." Olivia's knees went weak with relief. He was alive. He was coming back. Those 2 days crawled past, each hour an eternity. Olivia changed her dress 3 times on the day he was expected, unsure what to wear, how to look, what to say. She was pacing in the marshal's office when the door opened and Colt walked in, looking exhausted and sporting a fresh bruise on his jaw, pushing Marcus Finch ahead of him in handcuffs. Their eyes met, and everything Olivia wanted to say tangled in her throat. Colt handed Finch over to the deputies, gave his report to Hendricks, accepted his payment and official thanks. And then finally, he turned to her. "You were gone a long time," she managed. "Finch led me on a chase halfway across Missouri, but I gave my word I would come back." They stood there in the middle of the office with deputies and marshals bustling around them, and Olivia did not care who was watching. "I was worried about you. I know. I could see it in your telegram." His mouth quirked. "The one you sent telling me to be careful, to not take unnecessary risks, to come back in one piece. You got that? Hendricks forwarded it to me in Kansas City. Made me smile. No one has worried about me in a long time." "Well, you should get used to it," Olivia said, her heart pounding, "because I plan to keep worrying about you." Something changed in his expression, a softening, a hope that he tried to hide but could not quite manage. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." "So do I." "Then let me go first, because if I do not say this now, I might lose my nerve." He took her hands in his, and she felt the calluses, the strength, the slight tremor that told her he was as nervous as she was. "I have been alone a long time by choice, convinced it was easier that way. Then I met you, and everything I thought I knew got turned upside down. You are brave and smart, and you do not give up, and somewhere between St. Louis and here, I fell in love with you." Olivia's breath caught. "You love me?" "Yes. I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a bounty hunter with a horse and some saved money. But if you would consider it, I would like to try building something with you. A real life, maybe back in Texas or here in Missouri, wherever you want. I would give up the bounty hunting, find some other way to make a living. I just want to be with you." "I love you too," Olivia said, and the words felt like liberation. "I have been so scared you would leave and I would never see you again. I do not care what you do for work or how much money you have. I just want you." Colt pulled her close, and she wrapped her arms around him, feeling his heart beating against hers. "You are sure? Because once I commit to something, I do not quit. If you say yes, you are stuck with me." "I am very sure." He kissed her then, right there in the marshal's office. And Olivia kissed him back with all the fear and relief and love she had been holding inside. Someone whistled appreciatively, and someone else laughed, but Olivia did not care. She had found something she had not even known she was looking for. A man who saw her clearly and loved what he saw, who made her braver than she thought she could be. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Hendricks was watching them with amusement. "I suppose this means you will be staying in the area, Brennan? If Olivia wants to, her business is here." "Actually," Olivia said, an idea forming, "my business was in St. Louis, but there is nothing keeping it there. The company owns trading posts throughout Missouri and into Kansas territory. I could run things from anywhere, really, and I have always wanted to see Texas." Colt's eyes lit up. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying we should go to Texas. Buy that land you have been dreaming about. Build a ranch. I can manage the business side, keep the trading company running, maybe even expand into cattle. You know ranching. Between us, we could make something good. That would take time, capital, a lot of work. I have time and capital, and I am not afraid of work. Are you?" He laughed, the sound rusty as if he was out of practice. "No, Madame, I am not afraid of work." "Then it is settled. We go to Texas." "After we get married," Colt said firmly. "I may be a bounty hunter, but I was raised proper. I am not taking you to Texas without a ring on your finger and vows said." Olivia felt her smile widen until her face hurt. Are you proposing? I suppose I am. Olivia Kane, will you marry me? Yes, absolutely yes. Hendricks cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt this tender moment, but we do have a prisoner to process and statements to take. And Miss Kane, there is the matter of testifying against Finch and his associates. The next several weeks were consumed with legal proceedings. Olivia gave her testimony in a courtroom packed with spectators, showing the ledgers, explaining her father's discovery and murder, detailing her own near-death experience. Colt sat in the front row every day, a steady presence that gave her courage. Marcus Finch was convicted on multiple charges including murder, embezzlement, and conspiracy. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, and several of his associates joined him. With the trial concluded and justice served, Olivia began the process of settling her father's estate. The Kane Trading Company was worth more than she had realized, and once she removed the corrupt elements and hired honest managers, it ran smoothly. She kept the St. Louis headquarters but opened new offices in Springfield and Jefferson City, positioning herself to manage everything by telegram and periodic visits. She and Colt married in a simple ceremony in Springfield, witnessed by Marshall Hendricks and his wife. Olivia wore a dress of pale blue silk, and Colt wore his best clothes with his gun belt left behind for once. When he slipped a simple gold band on her finger and kissed her as his wife, Olivia thought her heart might burst from happiness. They traveled to Texas in the autumn of 1873, taking the train as far as they could and then riding the rest of the way. Colt brought her to the land his family had once owned, now being sold off in parcels. The original buyer had not been able to make it work and was looking to unload it. With Olivia's money and Colt's knowledge of the property, they bought back 500 acres, including the old homestead. The house was run down, but structurally sound, and Olivia threw herself into making it a home. She ordered furniture from St. Louis, hired local workers to make repairs, planted a garden that her new mother-in-law assured her would thrive in the Texas soil. Colt's sisters welcomed her warmly, delighted that their brother had finally found happiness, and Olivia gained not just a husband but a whole family. They bought cattle and horses, hired reliable hands, and slowly built up the ranch. Colt proved to be an excellent cattleman with an eye for good stock and a talent for training horses. Olivia managed the books and the business side, coordinating between the ranch and her trading company interests. It was hard work, the kind that left them exhausted at the end of each day, but it was good work, building something together. Their first winter in Texas was mild by northern standards, and Olivia discovered she loved the wide open spaces, the huge sky, the sense of possibility. She also discovered she was pregnant, which Colt received with joy tempered by fierce protectiveness. You need to slow down, he insisted when she told him. No more climbing ladders or lifting heavy things. I am pregnant, not fragile. Women have been having babies and working for thousands of years. Not my wife. My wife is going to rest and take care of herself and let me worry about the heavy lifting. Olivia laughed at his stubbornness, but she was touched by his concern. As her pregnancy progressed, Colt hovered like a nervous bird, making sure she ate properly, insisting she rest every afternoon, preparing the bedroom they had set aside for the nursery. Their son was born in late summer of 1874, a healthy baby with a lusty cry and dark hair like his father. They named him Daniel after Olivia's father, and Colt held him with a wonder that brought tears to Olivia's eyes. I cannot believe he is ours, Colt whispered, tracing Daniel's tiny fingers. I never thought I would have this. You deserve it. You deserve happiness. I have more than I ever dreamed of. A wife I love, a son, a home. Sometimes I wake up afraid it is all a dream. It is real. We are real. And we are going to be so happy. They were happy, happier than Olivia had imagined possible. The ranch prospered, and the trading company continued to grow. Colt proved to have a good head for business when he chose to apply it, and together they made decisions that benefited both enterprises. They bought more land, expanded the herd, built a new barn and bunkhouse for the growing number of ranch hands they employed. 2 years after Daniel was born, Olivia delivered a daughter they named Grace, who had her mother's red gold hair and her father's blue eyes. Colt was utterly besotted with his little girl, and Olivia often found him in the nursery at odd hours, just watching her sleep. "What are you thinking?" she asked one evening, finding him there. "That I am the luckiest man alive, that you gave me all of this, that I would do anything to protect you and them." Olivia moved to his side, leaning against him. "You do not have to protect us alone. We are a family. We protect each other. You were so brave that day in St. Louis, when Finch's men were shooting at you. You did not fall apart. You ran, and you fought, and you survived. Because you were there, because you believed I could. I believed it because it was true. You are the strongest person I know, Olivia Brennan." The years unfolded in a tapestry of work and love and family. The ranch became one of the most successful in the area, known for quality cattle and horses. The trading company expanded into new territories, and Olivia proved herself a shrewd businesswoman, respected even by men who initially dismissed her because of her gender. She made regular trips to her various offices, sometimes taking Colt and the children with her, sometimes going alone and trusting him to manage things at home. They added to their family twice more another son named James, who was quiet and thoughtful, and finally another daughter, Sarah, named for Olivia's friend who had helped them that desperate night in St. Louis. The house rang with laughter and the sound of children playing, and Olivia often paused in her work just to soak in the joy of it all. Marcus Finch died in prison in 1880, and when Olivia heard the news, she felt only a distant satisfaction. That chapter of her life was closed, the wounds healed. She had built something far better than revenge, something lasting and good. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Colt took her riding out to a high bluff that overlooked their land. It was evening, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, and the view stretched for miles. "When I first met you," he said, still holding the reins of their horses, "you were running for your life, bleeding and terrified, and all I could think was that you were the bravest person I had ever seen." "I was not brave, I was desperate." "You were both, but more than that, you were determined to see justice done, to honor your father's memory. You could have given up 100 times, but you did not. You did not give up either. You risked everything to help a stranger. You were never a stranger. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were important. I just did not realize you would become everything." Olivia reached for his hand, twining her fingers through his. "I love you, Colt Brennan. I loved you when you were a bounty hunter with nothing but a horse and a gun. I love you now as a rancher and a father and my partner in everything. And I will love you for the rest of my life." He pulled her close, kissing her with the passion that had never dimmed between them. "I love you too. Always have. Always will. You made me believe in happiness again. In family. In a future worth building." They stood there as the sun set. Two people who had found each other in the chaos of violence and fear and had built something beautiful. The ranch spread below them, the house where their children slept, the land they had worked together to make productive and profitable. It was everything Olivia had never known she wanted, and everything Colt had dreamed of but thought he would never have. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they rode back down to the house, where lamplight glowed warm in the windows, and their children waited. Daniel was 10 now, helping his father with the horses and learning the business. Grace was 8, clever and fearless, already showing signs of her mother's business acumen. James was 6, quiet but observant, with a gift for gentling the most stubborn animals. And Sarah was 4, a whirlwind of energy who kept everyone on their toes. That night, after the children were in bed, Olivia and Colt sat on the porch swing they had installed years ago, watching the moon rise over the Texas hills. The air was warm, scented with sage and grass, and the sound of cattle lowing in the distance was as familiar as breathing. "Do you ever think about St. Louis?" Colt asked. "About what your life would have been like if Finch had not tried to kill you?" "Sometimes. I probably would have married some boring banker and spent my life hosting tedious dinner parties. The trading company would have eventually failed without the ledgers proving Finch's theft. I would never have known what it felt like to be truly alive. You do not regret the danger, the fear? I regret that my father died. I regret that Finch hurt so many people. But I do not regret what came after. Meeting you, building this life, our children. None of that would have happened if I had stayed safe and proper. Colt pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. They underestimated you, he said. Finch and his men. They thought you would be easy to kill, easy to silence. They had no idea how brave you were. But you did. You never underestimated me. No, I saw exactly who you were from the start, and I fell in love with every bit of it. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Daniel grew into a capable young man who managed much of the day-to-day ranch operations, giving Colt more time to focus on breeding programs and expansion. Grace shocked everyone by announcing at 16 that she wanted to attend a women's college back east to study business, and though Colt worried, Olivia encouraged her daughter's ambition. "She is like you," Colt said the night before Grace left for college, "determined and smart and unwilling to be limited by what people expect. She is like both of us. She has your courage and your loyalty. She will do great things." James discovered a talent for veterinary medicine and apprenticed with a doctor in Austin, eventually returning to care for animals throughout the region. Sarah the baby proved to be a gifted horsewoman and started a breeding program for show horses that became renowned across Texas. Olivia and Colt grew older together, their hair graying, lines deepening around their eyes, but their love remained as strong as ever. They still took rides out to the bluff on special occasions, still sat on the porch swing in the evenings, still reached for each other in the night. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together friends from across Texas and Missouri. Sarah Mitchell made the long journey from St. Louis, now elderly but still sharp-eyed and opinionated. Marshall Hendricks sent a letter of congratulations, noting that the arrest of Marcus Finch remained one of the most satisfying cases of his career. As Olivia looked around at the gathering, at the life she and Colt had built, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had survived an attempt on her life and had turned that desperate flight into something beautiful. She had found a man who saw her clearly and loved her completely, who had stood beside her through every challenge and every triumph. "What are you thinking?" Colt asked, coming to stand beside her as the party swirled around them. "That I am grateful for everything, even the scary parts, because they led me to you." "We led each other," he corrected gently. "You saved me as much as I saved you. Maybe more. Then we are even. We are everything." They danced that night under the stars, surrounded by family and friends, and Olivia thought back to that desperate girl who had run from killers with a bounty hunter she barely knew. She had been brave then, but she had not known what bravery really meant. It was not just facing danger without flinching, though she had done that. It was also the courage to love deeply, to build a life with another person, to bring children into an uncertain world, and raise them with hope. Colt had understood that from the beginning. He had seen her courage and had matched it with his own, and together they had created something that would outlast them both. The ranch, the business, the children who would carry on after them, all of it was a testament to what two people could build when they refused to be limited by fear. As the evening wound down and their guests began to depart, Olivia and Colt found themselves alone again on the porch. The house behind them was quiet, their children having gone to their own homes or to guest rooms for the night. The land stretched out before them, peaceful and prosperous, the result of decades of hard work and love. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, for believing in me, for building this life with me." Colt took her hand, his thumb tracing the gold wedding band that had never left her finger. "I should thank you. You took a lonely man with no prospects and gave him everything that matters. A home, a family, A reason to wake up smiling every morning. We gave each other those things. Yes, he agreed. We did, and I would not change a single moment of it, even the terrifying parts. Especially the terrifying parts, Olivia said with a smile. They made us who we are. They sat together as the moon rose higher, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and had created the best of lives. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and possibility, and Olivia thought about all the women who had been underestimated, all the people who were told they could not do something simply because of who they were. She had proved them wrong. With Colt beside her, she had built an empire of business and family that stretched across 2 states. She had raised children who knew their own worth, who understood that courage came in many forms, who would carry forward the lessons they had learned. And it had all started with a bullet grazing her cheek and a cowboy who did not underestimate her at all. Years continued to roll by like the seasons, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with laughter once again. Daniel married a teacher from Austin and gave them 3 grandchildren. Grace, after completing her education, returned to Texas and took over much of the trading company operations, expanding it into new territories and modernizing their practices. She married a lawyer who treated her as an equal partner, and they had 2 daughters who inherited their mother's fierce intelligence. James married the daughter of the veterinarian he had studied under, and they settled nearby, ensuring that the ranch animals always had the best care. They had a son who showed early signs of following in his father's footsteps. Sarah married a horse trainer from Kentucky, and together they made the Brennan horse breeding program one of the finest in the country. They had twin boys who were as wild and free as their mother had been. Colt's health began to fail when he was in his early 60s, nothing dramatic but a gradual slowing down that frustrated him. Olivia cut back on her business travel to stay closer to home, and they spent long afternoons on the porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had once played. "I have had a good life," Colt said one evening, his voice softer than it used to be. "Better than I deserved." "You deserved every bit of happiness you got," Olivia corrected firmly. "You are a good man, Colt Brennan. The best man I have ever known. Because I met you. Because you made me want to be better. We made each other better. That is what love does." He reached for her hand, and she held it gently, feeling the bones more prominent now, the skin more delicate. But it was still the same hand that had pulled her onto a horse all those years ago, still the hand that had held hers through everything that mattered. "I am not afraid," he said quietly. "Whenever my time comes, I am not afraid, because I have lived a full life, because I have loved you, because our children and grandchildren will carry on. You are not going anywhere for a long time yet," Olivia said, her voice fierce despite the tears threatening. "I still need you. You have never needed anyone. That is one of the things I love about you. But I am glad you chose to want me anyway. Always. From that first night I wanted you." Colt lived another 5 years, long enough to see all his grandchildren growing strong and confident, long enough to celebrate his 40th wedding anniversary with Olivia, long enough to know that everything he and Olivia had built would continue. He died peacefully in his sleep one spring morning, and Olivia held his hand as he slipped away, whispering her love until the very end. The grief was immense, a tidal wave that threatened to pull her under. But Olivia had survived worse, and she had a family that surrounded her with love and support. She mourned deeply, but did not break, because Colt would not have wanted that. He had always admired her strength, her resilience, her refusal to let circumstances define her. She continued to run the trading company from the ranch, making decisions and guiding strategy well into her 70s. The business thrived under her leadership and graces, and when Olivia finally stepped back to let the younger generation take full control, she did so knowing it was in capable hands. She spent her final years surrounded by family, telling stories about her and Colt's early days to grandchildren and great-grandchildren who listened with wide eyes. She told them about running for her life, about the cowboy who saved her, about building a ranch from nothing, about love that lasted a lifetime. "Were you scared, great-grandma?" one of Sarah's twin boys asked her one afternoon. "Terrified," Olivia admitted. "But being scared did not mean I could give up. And I had your great-grandfather beside me. He never once doubted that I could do whatever needed doing. That gave me courage. He must have been very brave, too. The bravest man I ever knew, and the kindest. He taught me that real strength is not about violence or domination. It is about standing up for what is right, protecting the people you love, building something lasting." She told them about the night they crossed the Mississippi in a stolen rowboat, about studying ledgers by firelight, about the day they bought back the Texas land. She told them about their wedding, about the birth of each of their children, about the small moments and the grand adventures that had filled their decades together. Olivia lived to be 87 years old, sharp-minded and opinionated to the very end. She died in the bedroom she had shared with Colt, surrounded by children and grandchildren, with the Texas sun streaming through the windows and the sound of horses in the distance. Her last words were, "Tell him I am coming. Tell Colt I kept my promise. I lived fully. I loved deeply. And I am ready to see him again." They buried her beside Colt on the hill overlooking the ranch, where they had often ridden together to watch the sunset. The funeral brought together people from across the state and beyond, testament to the lives they had touched and the legacy they had built. The trading company sent representatives, the ranching community came in force, and friends from their decades of life filled the small family cemetery. Daniel, now in his 50s and gray-haired himself, spoke at the service. "My mother was the strongest person I have ever known," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "She survived an assassination attempt, exposed corruption, built a business empire, and raised a family. But more than any of those accomplishments, she loved. She loved my father with a depth and devotion that inspired everyone who knew them. She loved her children and taught us to be brave and honest and true. She loved this land and this life that she and Dad built together. And she never let anyone tell her she could not do something simply because she was a woman. They underestimated her. Those men who tried to kill her all those years ago, they thought she would be easy to silence. But my father never underestimated her, not for a single moment. He saw exactly who she was, and he loved every part of it. Together they built something that will last for generations." Grace spoke next, tears streaming down her face, but her voice steady. "My mother taught me that bravery is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. She showed me that a woman can run a business, can make hard decisions, can compete in a man's world and win. But she also showed me that success means nothing without love and family. She balanced everything, and she made it look easy, even though I know now how hard it must have been. I hope I can be half the woman she was." James and Sarah shared their own memories, and then the grandchildren and great-grandchildren added theirs. Stories of a woman who was always interested in their lives, who encouraged their dreams, who never dismissed their concerns as trivial. As the sun set over the Texas hills, casting the land in gold and shadow, the family gathered around the two graves, and someone began to sing an old hymn that Olivia had loved. The Brennan Ranch continued for generations after, run by Olivia and Colt's descendants, a living monument to two people who had found each other in the chaos of violence and had built something beautiful. The trading company evolved with the times, eventually becoming a modern corporation, but it never forgot its roots in a woman's courage and determination. In the ranch house, now preserved as a family heritage site, visitors could see the desk where Olivia had managed her business, the porch swing where she and Colt had spent countless evenings, the bedroom where they had laughed and loved and dreamed. They could read letters the couple had written to each other, see photographs of a handsome cowboy and a beautiful woman with red gold hair, learn about the night in St. Louis when everything changed. The story became legend in the family, passed down from generation to generation. The tale of how great great-grandmother Olivia had been underestimated by everyone except the cowboy who saved her life and stole her heart. How she had proved that bravery came in many forms. How love could flourish even in the most desperate circumstances. How two people with nothing but determination and each other could build an empire. And on quiet evenings when the Texas wind whispered through the grass, some said you could still see them, two figures on horseback riding up to the bluff, side by side, as they had been in life and would be forever in memory. A woman who had refused to be silenced, and a man who had seen her courage and matched it with his own, bound together by a love that had transformed both their lives and created a legacy that would never be forgotten. Their story was one of survival and justice, of building and growing, of family and love. But most of all, it was a story about seeing people clearly, about not underestimating the courage that lives in every heart, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Marcus Finch and his associates had looked at Olivia Kane and seen an easy target, a woman who could be eliminated without consequence. Colt Brennan had looked at the same woman and seen a fighter, a survivor, someone worth risking everything to help. That difference in perception had changed everything. It had led to justice for her murdered father, to the building of a business empire, to the creation of a ranching dynasty, to a love story that spanned 4 decades and touched countless lives. All because one man had not underestimated how brave one woman could be, and that woman had not underestimated her own strength. The sun set over the Texas hills, just as it had for decades, casting long shadows across the Brennan Ranch. Cattle grazed peacefully. Horses moved through well-maintained pastures, and in the distance the lights of the ranch house glowed warm against the gathering darkness. Life continued, generation after generation, each one carrying forward the lessons learned from two remarkable people who had found each other when they needed it most. And somewhere beyond the reach of mortal eyes, Olivia and Colt Brennan rode together still, forever young, forever brave, forever in love, their story complete but never truly ended, because the best stories never really end. They live on in the people who hear them, in the descendants who carry the blood and the legacy, in the land itself which remembers every footstep, every laugh, every whispered word of love. They had underestimated how brave one woman could be. The cowboy had not underestimated her at all. And from that simple truth had come everything that mattered, a life well lived, a love that endured, and a legacy that would shine like a beacon for generations to come, reminding everyone who heard the tale that courage can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most extraordinary lives begin with a bullet grazing a cheek and a stranger who chooses to help when help is needed most.